All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us. Another episode of Catching Up with Jacob 2024 version, first one of the year. Here's Jacob Prass. How you doing, Jacob?
Blessings in Jesus, dear friends. I'm hanging in there and looking forward to his coming.
Amen. Amen. Well, happy New Year, Jacob. Hope everything is all right so far, 5 days in.
Well, the black swan is hoovering, but other than that,
Black Swan is taking off. It's
that's
taking
it.
off. Thank you. And we also have, of course, down under, Davey. How you doing?
Yep, doing pretty good. Good to be here with you, and good to have you back, Marco, too.
It's been a bit of time off, so that's awesome. Thank you, guys. January 5th, 2024, first one of the year. And Jay, off to a good start, aren't we?
Absolutely. Happy New Year, everyone. Good to see you.
Here. Good to see you, brother. God bless you guys. Just real quick, any announcements, Jacob? Any announcements, anything new coming up? And
On
then
the
we'll
14th
move right
of
into it.
January, 14th of January in England, I shall be speaking at Ark Christian Fellowship at Swallowfield Village Hall at 10:30 a.m. Sunday, the 14th of January, Swallowfield Village Hall, the Ark Christian Fellowship. That's south of Reading. It's between Basingstoke and Reading. If you're in the western suburbs of London and you don't have a church, we'd love to see you. It is posted on the itinerary page. Just Google Moriel itinerary, you'll find it. Also, we have the first American dates coming up the end of the month. The end of January, I shall be in New York City at the Church of the Open Door, Baltimore at the Church of the Open Door, two churches that are affiliated with Moriel. Then I shall be in Texas, and the Texas dates are also posted. Looking forward to going to Texas. The foundation that's promoting the meetings have posted us before, and they did a fantastic job. They're wonderful brethren. Looking forward to being back in Texas, as well as my native New York and in Baltimore, where my father's family was from. So that'll be it. It's all up on the internet.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that Texas is going to be fun. Texas is going to be fun. Jay was just in Texas not too long ago, so that would be good. Any questions, any thoughts, please go to moriel.org and you can find more information. As Jacob said, it will be posted. All the dates will be posted soon, so keep an eye on that.
They're up already. They're already posted.
Are they already up? Okay. Even the Texas one too?
Yeah, we're still waiting for this guy from California named Marco to get back to us, but other than that, everything's posted.
That guy, don't trust him. Don't trust him. Jay, any thoughts on the podcast for the new year? I know people want to know more about it, but if you have just basic information where to put them to, that'll be great.
Absolutely. Just wanted to remind you that you can find our podcasts on moriel.org, moriel.tv, Buzzsprouts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Podcast Index, Amazon Music, TuneIn and Alexa, iHeartRadio, Player FM, Podcast Addict, Podchasers, Podcasts, Deezer, and Listen Notes. Again, from all of those different platforms, you can download our lessons, our episodes of Catching Up with Jacob, Ken's Corner, Sandy Simpson's, and they can be listened to anytime you want. So please
Awesome
take
stuff.
advantage of our team's hard work to get you the podcasts.
Awesome stuff. Thanks, Jay. Yeah, you can avail yourself of all those materials and download them on your phone, tablets, computer, and take advantage of them while we still have the internet. That's another story for another time, but take advantage of it and download them, put them on a hard drive, put them on a flash drive, put them somewhere, and get a hold of Jacob's books on moriel.org. Buy them there, get a hard copy, and make avail yourself of those things. So wonderful. Let's catch up. Jacob, let's do something a little bit different for this year. We want to start off with your hot take. What is your hot take of the week? I'll let you have the mic. Go for it.
If you follow daily news events on the internet, you're astounded by the culture of celebrity. While major news events are taking place in the economic sphere, the political sphere, the strategic sphere, all kinds of things, the Middle East, obviously, the Ukraine, domestically, all what's happening in Britain, all kinds of things are taking place. Yet the volume of news that is diverted to is, what's her name, Taylor Swift dating this football player, and these are major news items to significant percentages of the population. That is what they're being diverted away from reality to focus on. That's the big news to them. This has always existed in Britain with tabloid journalism. I remember there's a ridiculous thing called The Sun. I think it's ridiculous. And it always has a page 3 pinup girl, and then the soccer scores on the back page, but the front page is always something ridiculous. I remember the day the Berlin Wall came down. This is going back some years now. And there was a little piece about the Berlin Wall coming down, the news of the century, a little piece. But the headline, the front page story, Vicar elopes with gay lover. I know God will understand, says Reverend Jones. That is their perspective of the world of a certain percentage of working class England. Not all of them, but a certain percentage of working class England in the Council of States. That is what they're fed. It just keeps people small-minded, looking at idiocy. Well, it's always existed. The misuse of sports to divert people's attention, that goes back to ancient Rome, with the chariot races and the gladiators and whatever, and the Olympics. This always has gone on. But the internet has transformed the world into putting this kind of bogus news or bogus concept of news on steroids. It's unbelievable how many people watch those things, but it works. It's gotten to the point where people will say absurd things and it will be underreported and ignored. This week, when Biden was questioned by a reporter about the border, he said, they should give me the resources to do it.
Give me the money I need to protect the border.
That was his response. That's why he was blaming the border crisis on the Republicans not giving him the budget. A complete lie, total idiocy. But that's what he said. And people who just see it. And they won't know that the mainstream media is just manipulating them. Well, this week was another one with Claudine Gay. Over 50 documented allegations of plagiarism, including on her doctorate thesis. Why is her doctorate not being taken away, or at least an academic review if it should be taken away? Why is she being able to retain her position as a professor in Harvard if a portion of her doctoral thesis was plagiarized? Obvious questions. Associated Press has come out and said that plagiarism has now been weaponized by the conservatives. The fact that she plagiarized over 50 instances, we're not just talking about one, and she even admitted or was agreed she had to revise one of the things she published because she did not give due accreditation to sources, attribution to sources. Even she admitted it functionally. No, it's just it happens because plagiarism has now become a political weapon of the right. You couldn't fathom people being so stupid as to believe this, but there's people who do. Then comes Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton had to go a bit under the radar for a while. He's an opportunist. He's a windbag. Obviously, he's an opportunist. He's in the race industry. But after what happened with Tawana Brawley in Wilson, New York, when he alleged these crimes took place against a Black woman that it turns out never did, and then he gave a repeat performance of the same thing in Ferguson, Missouri with Michael Brown, where both autopsies showed it was not a hands-up shooting, with his back turned, where all the forensic evidence showed that Michael Brown, after robbing a store in the company of a felon who was wanted for robbery and who had on a previous occasion had admitted having lied to the police and had spent 5 years in prison and was wanted, was in the company of Brown. When Brown robbed the store, Brown is under the influence of substances, cannabis and alcohol. A cop recognizes him as fitting the identity of the person who perpetrated the robbery. And there's severe facial injury to the cop. Michael Brown's fingerprints are found all over the cop's holster. He went for the cop's gun. Both autopsies show the angle of entry of the bullets were not hands up, don't shoot, back turned. The guy was lying. The guy who had lied on a previous occasion to the police and who was wanted and had an incentive to lie. And then there were no fewer than 5, possibly 6 witnesses, all of them Black Americans, interviewed by Eric Holder's FBI, were inconsistent in their story. None of them would say it was hands up, don't shoot. But Sharpton came out and he pushed this whole thing at Ferguson of hands up, don't shoot. It is also how squad member, who was not even a lawyer, but Nancy Pelosi put her on the House Judiciary Committee, despite the fact she's not a lawyer. I speak of Lori Bush. Again, was another person who politically capitalized on what happened at Ferguson, except nothing happened at Ferguson. A guy robbed a store. A cop identified him. He assaulted the cop and went for the cop's gun and he got killed. That's all that happened. And his accomplice lied with a motive to lie. That's all that happened. So Sharpton had to go low because it was the second time he pulled such a stunt and it backfired on him. He refused to admit he was wrong. He just went into almost hiding. He just maintained a low profile. Okay. Well, now he's been sticking his head out again. And he says that what happened to Gay, the president of Harvard, having to resign, forgetting the fact that a white feminist president of the University of Pennsylvania also had to resign, who was a Caucasian, he said, this is an attack on all Black women. Nobody addresses the fact that one of the women most plagiarized by Gay was Carol Swain, a genuine academic and a very credible researcher and author S, who wrote the definitive book published in the last 15 to 20 years on the relationship between race and electoral politics. And she's a conservative, but she's a Black woman. A Black woman gets plagiarized by Gay, and Sharpton says this is an attack on all Black women. Well, is it an attack on Dr. Carol Swain, who Gay plagiarized? It's just ridiculous what he says. Forget about the facts. Forget about the fact that there's documented evidence supporting that the allegations that she's committed plagiarism 50 times, and she's unqualified for the job she had. Therefore, she's unqualified for the job she had. She shouldn't even be a professor, let alone president of Harvard. Forget about that. Automatically racialize it. If you question the integrity of a Black person, you're a racist. And it's an attack on all Black women. How stupid can it be when people can say things that are absurd, patently absurd? When Biden can say things that are patently absurd? When his spokesman, the lesbian, Karine, what's her name?
Karine Jean-Pierre.
Yeah, Jean-Pierre, yeah. When she refuses to answer questions put to her, even by left-wing journalists that are politically inconvenient, things that are just ludicrous are underreported by the mainstream press and accepted by progressives. It doesn't matter how stupid something obviously is. It doesn't matter the fact that it lacks, even a modicum of credibility. They throw it out there and they get away with it. Meanwhile, other people are worried about who Taylor Swift's boyfriend is, the football player or whatever it is. This is a sad situation. Is this what freedom of the press is supposed to be about? Is this what it's supposed to be about? Is it supposed to be about investigative journalism and uncovering facts? It's not about that. It's not about that at all. It's not even about political propaganda anymore. It looks like it's become lowest common denominator entertainment. MSNBC, CNN, Washington Compost, New York Slimes, the BBC, these things have basically become lowest common denominator entertainment. That's what we've got for news. How low the intellectual level of society has become. Yet they get away with it.
Thank you, Jacob. That's your hot take of the week. Absolutely right. Well, you know, the press and the media, they prey on people's intelligence or lack thereof.
Lack of it, yeah.
Yeah, and they completely are immersed in all kinds of different things. People are immersed in football and sports, and not I wouldn't have anything wrong with just in and of themselves, but the immersion of it and the fanaticism of it, that nothing else matter except that, or Taylor Swift's love life. Those are the only two things that people really care about anymore, and it just shows the level not only of intelligence, but just in general, the expectation of young people, that's really all you need to know. That's really all you need to care about. It's know those things, then plagiarize your way through college and get a good job. And that is the example that
That's right.
Yeah, that's the example they give. Jacob, let's catch up a little bit here on some of the things that have gone on. The mass shooter, of course, at Perry High School, identified as Dylan Butler. He is a trans activist, seemingly. He might be part of the community himself, not sure, but killing one, injuring five, seemingly on all his media posts, on his social media posts, he, they pronouns, all that stuff. And no doubt, this was a tragic thing that happened yesterday in Iowa. Again, we're seeing this again more and more of people in that community, trans activists, taking it out on those who perhaps oppose it. But this is, again, like the trans shooter in Nashville, something that it's repeated again. We still don't know the trans manifest because the FBI keeps holding it. But this story is going to disappear very quickly. So before it does, because the media wants nothing to do with the story, but before it gets away from the consciousness of people, we want to talk about it very quickly. Jacob, your thoughts on it? It's a terrible tragedy.
The disproportionate amount of crimes and shooting crimes.
Yes.
Gun crime perpetrated against children. We saw it in Nashville. We've seen it again. Can you imagine if somebody who could be identified or misidentified as a Christian nationalist did that? They'd never live it down. Never. But if a transgender person perpetrates the same crime against children, shooting little kids, it's all swept under the rug. This is how disgusting the mainstream media is.
No, there's no doubt. And obviously, the one thing that has not been addressed is, of course, the SSRI issue.
Yes.
The SSRI issue is a big
side effect of those serotonin suppressing drugs. This is absolutely correct. The very high rate of psychotic dysfunction among transgender people, double the national average at least. Even if the statistics available are accurate, it would be double the national average of people reliant upon these serotonin suppressant medications. This is for psychotics. This is not okay. Even things like Valium are abused, but we're not talking here about Valium. We're talking about serotonin suppressants. We're talking about serious medications. These are for psychotic. In other words, the rate of psychotic illness, diagnosed psychosis among transgender people, it must be at least double the national average.
Yeah, compared to heterosexuals, yeah, it's more than twice as likely, more than twice as likely, and around 25% of them are certainly using SSRI. So quite a number of the community, quarter of the
Yes,
community,
one
are
out
on
of four.
antidepressants. Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why they're overrepresented. Even the media doesn't want to admit it. They're overrepresented in all kinds of mass shootings, not just this one, all kinds of mass shootings.
All kinds.
SSRI seems to be part of the big equation in many of these shootings.
But they say the problem are the Christians who oppose it.
Yeah, because it's usually blamed on those who oppose it. Exactly. Usually blame on those who oppose it. Now the AP is already going at it, saying that he was bullied. People went against him. And so this is his way of releasing all that
Shooting
tension.
little kids is the way you get back at people who bully you.
Incredible. Yeah, this is a new normal. He got tired of bullying, says AP Press. Classmates, it says, of the shooter. He was being bullied because he was confused. And of course, this escalated recently. And then obviously the SSRIs. And then, of course, social media scrubbed his account. He can't get a lot of information now because it's all being taken off the internet. And so now you're not going to find anything. So it's going to go away, just like the shooter in Nashville, just like the shooter here. It's going to go away very quickly because you know what? I don't think people care that it happened to be little kids who were shot. This is horrible. This is a horrible thing, but the account TikTok's been scrubbed, Instagram's been scrubbed. So we're not going to hear too much about it, but I think people need to hear about it here because it's not going to be the last time. I believe
Absolutely. Because we're going to ignore it, because the mainstream media is going to cover it up, we're doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
They don't want to address the issue. And
Yeah,
because of that, children will die.
Yeah. We already have been repeating it. We've had Colorado, we've had Nashville, we've had Aberdeen, we've had Denver, and now Iowa. And these are just in recent times, but they're doing the same kind of gaslighting, or a term I heard last week, gaslighting. They're doing the same kind of thing. It's, transphobia or homophobia, or it's Islamophobia, where they play up the victim mentality and they get away with it. It's the poor trans. Getting back to the SSIs too, that combined with the hormone blockers and the puberty blockers, treatments, it's a dangerous cocktail. Just it's been proven.
Yeah.
And
So on the one hand, we pump the SSRIs, and on the other hand, we combine it with all the hormone therapy and transitional drugs, which even doctors have said we don't even know. There's no study. There's no long-term study of what these drugs can do. And you're mixing it, as Davey said, with the cocktail. What do you expect to happen? It's just going to be absolute violent response.
What is really interesting is this week in New Hampshire, a liberal Democrat state, maybe not as far to the left as its neighbor Vermont, but definitely a liberal state, definitely a blue state, and its legislature, which is Democrat dominated, voted on parental rights, that schools must inform parents about children wanting to transition and things of this nature. And the homosexual activist lobby is saying this will endanger the children.
Oh man.
Just the complete destruction of parental rights and responsibility and replacing them with the state. No, it's going to hurt the children if you make the teachers tell the parents that the children are looking to transition this way, or something. It is unbelievable. Your child can be prescribed these kinds of drugs or make life-altering surgical decisions and without parental approval of children. This is how sick and evil it has become.
Yeah, no doubt. And Jacob, I think we talked about it here, but something's looming among states here in America, because you have states like Washington and Oregon, which are very, very open to that, especially Washington, bringing in kids. You don't have to report to the parents. You can bring youth into a shelter. The shelter has to take them to a government facility. If they show any signs of wanting to transition, you can't tell the parents. And a lot of kids get brought into Washington. In Idaho, which is a state that does not want that, in Wyoming doesn't want that either. They're having some problems there because there are kids being taken from Wyoming and Idaho into Washington. And Washington and Idaho is very much considering kidnapping charges taking them across state line because they're taking these kids to have life-altering surgeries in a state like Washington. So it's going to come to, I believe, at some point, this massive division, maybe some blockades at the state's border because of this issue. This one issue about children is going to become huge.
I think you're correct. Will you need a passport to cross the state line?
At some point, I'm not saying tomorrow or the next day, but it has to be resolved because states are not going to, Idaho, Wyoming, they're not going to sit back and say, we're going to let our children be taken into another state just because it's legal there or because they could do it there.
Yes. What you're also seeing is, again, in the case of New Hampshire, it was a Democratic Party dominated state legislature that voted for this legislation. The radical left, the progressives, will turn against the Democrats. Blinken's house in Washington was picketed this week by pro-Hamas, pro-so-called Palestinian demonstrators and activists. The left, it's the Democrats themselves, the left-center Democrats are being intimidated by the radical left, being forced to go further and further left and acquiesce to what the extreme left wants.
It's always like that,
it's interesting how it's turning on them.
Yeah.
It's turning on the liberals.
Very, very interesting. Oh, let's talk about something else, Jacob, that it's going to turn on the liberals. It's this Jeffrey Epstein stuff. Let's talk about it. Jeffrey Epstein, document dump part 2. Is 2 dumps already that have come in. What many think is just the beginning. And the info of names, obviously, the names that were released, it doesn't mean that they were nefariously taking part of this destruction of human lives and the women and the young girls that were engaged in sexual activity. But many names, about 150 associates to be released. I'll give you some of them, and you give me your take on it, and every one of us here can give our take on Bill Clinton. Big shock there, right? Maine Senator George Mitchell, French model Jean-Luc Brunel, former New Mexico Governor, New Mexico Bill Richardson, scientists Marvin Minsky, Michael Jackson, Prince Andrew, Alan Dershowitz, Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking was really bizarre because, according to this, he's participated in all kinds of underage orgies.
How could he do that when he couldn't get out of a wheelchair?
Yeah, make that as you can guess. Al Gore, George Lucas, David Copperfield, Naomi Campbell, Kevin Spacey, which he said, I'm gay, so I shouldn't be on the list, which is another story. What a list. Now, it doesn't mean that they participated in it. There's maybe other names that are not, that we didn't say, but that doesn't mean they participated on it, but they are considered associates or people that Epstein brought up during his conversations with Maxwell or other of the girls. These names were brought up.
My own perspective is this. The reason that they have released these lists and shown so many people, people who almost certainly did not have anything to do with pedophilia, people like Stephen Hawkins or people like Alan Dershowitz and so forth, who may have just known Epstein, flown on his plane, been to his island, but did not engage in anything of a sexual nature. When you flood the list with that kind of amount of disclosure about that many people, it becomes a way of giving plausible deniability to people like Bill Clinton or whoever else, or possibly Bill Gates, some would say. It gives plausible deniability to the real perpetrators of sex crimes against children by saying, well, everybody's on that list. Well, he knew a lot of people. Many people flew on his jet. Many people have been to his island. I wasn't involved in anything of that nature. It just gives plausible deniability to those who actually did engage in pedophilia. And I think that is why it came out. It's being put out as, look, you see, nothing's being hid, nothing's being suppressed. We're going to put everything out in the open. It's being presented that way to the public. But in fact, what it is doing is giving plausible deniability to pedophiles. That's my perspective.
Yeah, that's a good point. Jay, what do you think? And this is a defamation lawsuit. Doesn't mean anything per se, but there are a lot of associates mentioned here. Why don't we know the other names, the ones that the FBI has been holding on to? As Jacob said, it muddles the water, it clouds your vision. What about the other names?
Oh, the other names are people that are in the government right now, probably the administration,
Yeah.
probably one of them, Joseph Robinette Biden, but because it would topple the current power structure, it is a matter of national security. Therefore, it can be redacted. Therefore, it is imperative that it be covered up. And as Jacob was just stating, you know, what they're giving us is literally the iceberg on the surface.
Yeah.
And remember, an iceberg is always much larger underwater than it is on the surface area of above the water. This
You
goes
mentioned-
really deep.
I don't doubt it, brother. You mentioned the one that was redacted. How do you get your name redacted? Prince Andrew couldn't get his name redacted. Other people couldn't get their names redacted. One name was redacted. It's there. It's about 15 characters long, perhaps. And people may try to make case of what it could be, but there's only one, in my mind, there's only one reason you should take it out: national security, as you said. National security. So it very much plays on, it could be a current White House administrator or somebody in the White House cabinet, whatever it may be. It's pretty interesting, isn't it?
It's a key figure that they still need to be there. No
Yeah.
matter who it is, it's someone very close to the power circle or the head of the power circle. Not that Biden is in the power circle. I don't know where he is, but it's definitely
He
not
doesn't
in
either.
power.
Doesn't know. Now, I want to ask you this too. Megyn Kelly, which we know she's in mainstream media, now she's on her own, independent, raised some eyebrows. She said something bizarre. And she said, well, we might be hearing from Epstein directly if she's allowed to make that happen. What in the world is she saying? We're not done with Epstein yet, but maybe we can hear from him directly. Jay, help me out with this.
Well, I mean, for me, it's so easy to surgically alter a corpse and then put it into a cell when all the cameras magically go off at the same time so that you can't see anything. It's very easy to do a lot of different things. And I've said it, I'll say it again. Personally, I think he's on a beach somewhere, probably, given his proclivity, somewhere in Thailand, enjoying the percentage and the interest he's getting from his money-making power scheme. Either that, and I'll give you the alternative. Everything that Epstein ever did as far as talking to people and the activities on his island have been video recorded. And
Correct.
someone has leaked the archives.
That's correct. That's correct. There's some recorded or written material of him that can be introduced into public evidence posthumously. Yes.
This is about, sex trafficking, child trafficking, pedophilia.
A lot of these sex creeps, they like the video stuff, don't they? They like to have
bizarre. Yeah. It's
The man
sickening.
owned an island. And he was obviously a honeypot for intelligence gathering and being able to pressure different politicians and powerful business magnates. You don't
Very
think he
much
had
like-
video evidence of everything that he could show people to intimidate them to do what he wants?
The interesting thing about the FBI, what they have, and it's under the FBI, just like the ones about the trans Nashville shooter. They won't release it, but it's there because we know the FBI collected quite a bit of hard drives. The one thing that was interesting, the FBI did say, is that there are names of the victim and the names of the aggressor, in this case, the rapist, on every hard drive. Every hard drive has two names: the name of the person and the name of the victim. And that is bizarre. That means that Epstein had dibs on every single one of his clients. And there's a reason why these blackmail, information and prominent American politicians are listed in there, because there's a client list. We know there's a client list.
Yes.
It's been said in the court cases, a client list, but we don't know the clients. That's the one thing we don't know. We know there's a client list, but we don't know. And the FBI is hiding thousands of videotapes and that are going to be used to, I guess, to blackmail. So it brings up the point on the administration, and this is the point, why they don't want to stop the child trafficking through the border. the current administration does not want to stop
because
the
it's
illegal
it's
immigration of
billions
children.
of dollars. It's billions with a B of dollars of revenue for their supporters. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
just sex trafficking. Some of these kids are brought and they're put into like places to pick grapes, places to
Yes.
pick vegetables,
Yes.
and they don't earn anything. They're
No.
given a hovel and a bowl of mush every day to eat, and that's considered their immigration. And that's their slavery, their
That's the
indentured
slavery.
servitude until they've paid off the debt, which they never will pay off.
Yeah. And
And
that's
that's
why
billions of dollars.
billions. That's right. And that's why they don't want to stop it.
Correct.
Trump wanted to stop it.
The
Well,
Democrats have
whoa.
always been about slavery.
That's
Since
correct.
1861, they've always been about trafficking people. It's just
Yeah.
instead of trafficking a certain nationality, they traffic children. They traffic immigrants. They traffic slaves from Asia, from Africa. That's
Yeah.
what the Democrats are all about and have always been about.
And of course, they're taking
agree with
advantage
what
of the
James
free
says.
flow of people. Go ahead, Jacob. Go ahead, Jacob.
With what James says. I also think that there's two other factors that we need to take into account in the thinking of the establishment with regard to these issues of the children particularly, but not only the children, the general the general problem of this unsecured border and the illegal immigration. One of which is demography. The Asian economies are in longer trouble. South Korea is in trouble. Certainly, India is not, Philippines are not, but China certainly is, Japan certainly is. Okay. The United States, Europe certainly is. The United States would be in such trouble also if it were not for immigration. Okay. And unlike Europe, at least we can bring in Hispanics primarily, who are Judeo-Christian, westernized, essentially products of a Western civilization, as opposed to those who are products of an Islamic civilization who are colonizing Europe. We're bringing in Hispanics who at least have a common European and Judeo-Christian heritage. That's one thing, okay? It's to protect the national demography that we've so damaged with abortion, okay? We've depopulated ourselves with abortion. You got to get the people from somewhere, or we'd have the same problems you have in South Korea, Japan, Europe, and China. The other factor is labor-intensive industry. To remain wage competitive, there is no way the United States can remain wage competitive against economies like Indonesia or even Mexico. There's no way we can remain wage competitive in labor-intensive industries unless, as James said, you have slavery. It was interesting that the founder of the farm workers unions in California what was his name? Caesar
Chavez?
Yeah, Cesar Chavez. He vehemently opposed the legal immigration.
Correct.
He was a Hispanic himself, but he understood the realities of what was happening with the slave labor. He vehemently opposed it. But of course, they don't. That's like a black conservative. They have to sweep that under the. It's like the things that Martin Luther King said that don't fit what Black Lives Matter says. You've got to purge that. You've got to edit it out of the historical record.
Yeah, no doubt that these things are in a very real way. I wanted to ask something really quick before we get started, because on the next topic, because 85,000 migrant kids went missing April 28, 2023. We have not been able to track any of this down. No one's found out where these kids are. 85,000. You could imagine the amount of prostitution, as Jay talked about, slavery that goes on even when we don't even know it. We just know that these kids were one time came into the States. We don't know where they are. 85,000 missing. It's unbelievable. Davey, you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, this will actually tie in too with what you were talking about the kids, because when you were talking about, Jay was talking about the amount of money in child trafficking and all the rest of it, I keep thinking of Revelation 18, verse 13, where it talks about the judgment that's coming on Babylon the Great, where
That's right.
two of the things that are mentioned are slaves and human lives. But as I was looking for the verse, I just noticed something, and it's kind of like, I need to look at this more, and I'd be interested in your guys' thoughts too. But I just happened to notice Revelation 18:21. Then a strong angel picked up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, "So will Babylon, the great city, be thrown down with violence and will never be found again." And I couldn't help but think of Jesus' words, it'd be better to have a millstone tied around your neck and thrown into the sea. So I just noticed that then, and I was kind of like, I'm interested in your guys' thoughts on it.
Well, we've been saying this for some time. In the eyes of God, what these people are doing is a capital crime. And if you look at the context of the passage you cite, notice it is not just hurting the children, but spiritually abusing them,
Yes.
affecting them spiritually. When you do that to somebody, when you surgically reconstruct somebody to resemble the opposite sex, even though their DNA says that, or they're chromosomally of one sex, they're surgically mutilated to resemble the opposite one. That will affect somebody not only psychologically, it'll affect somebody spiritually.
That's right. That's right.
And you're doing it to a child.
Yeah. No, that's a big important passage in Babylon the Great in the book of Revelation, Davey. Thanks for sharing that. That's a very powerful passage in terms of what it will become eventually with this world power, as it were, the kingdom of the Antichrist and Babylon the Great. I wanted to ask you something, Jacob, about people are making big predictions about 2024. We've never talked about that here, or I'm not going to ask you about predictions of the sort, but they are making big predictions based on black swan events, which is, of course, a term that is basically says it's an unknown scenario that it suddenly happens, and it makes this it carries with it some big implications for the world, and usually because of the swan effect, it goes down. So it could be a cyber attack, it could be some kind of stock market crash or a war that nobody predicts. So that's the idea of a black swan event. To those who don't know, there's a lot of concerns about that, and one of the major catalyzing events that would seem unpredictable, it would be what's going to happen with the elections in 2024 here in the States. A lot of countries in the world are hedging their bets, as it were, because many of their political aspirations and economies are tied, unbelievably enough, to the United States still, even though it is what it is at this point. They still hang their hats on what happens to the U.S. So it's going to be an extreme impact of some sort. But what do you think about this? It seems to be the Black Swan event being promoted by the Dems. It seems to be they're the ones that are promoting it. It's going to be a big one. It's going to be a big one. It's setting something up, it feels, for maybe some kind of election interference, whatever the case may be. What are your thoughts on these?
Let's remember something, that the strategic epicenter of the Western world, although NATO is headquartered in Brussels, it's the Anglo-American alliance. It's Washington and London. And although there are other financial centers that have emerged or tried to, like Dubai and things of that nature, the global finance is still basically very much a function of New York City, Wall Street, and London, City of London. Still is, even post-Brexit. Okay. You have not only general elections in the United States, you have a major election coming in Great Britain at the same time as in the United States. It's double barrel. Americans don't see it this way, but when you're in this side of the Atlantic, you understand that the strategic partnership between the United States and Britain, or the Five Eyes, as they're called,
right,
helping Australia and Canada and the United States and Britain, the Five Eyes. You understand that the British Commonwealth, what happened in the British Empire, the British government is still, it's the junior partner but it's still a major factor in the equation. The fact that you have elections in America and Britain the same year, and there are elections that are going to determine the future of the both countries, if they're going to have one. This must be weighed very carefully. What's happening with the American elections and the British elections happening in tandem with each other, that compounds the impact of what's going to transpire electorally and the ramifications. Secondly, again, when Thatcher was elected, everything changed. The Cold War would not have ended. The Iron Curtain would not have come down had Margaret Thatcher not been elected. She was the unsung hero of the collapse of the Soviet Empire, much more than Reagan, in my opinion. But be that as it may, don't discount the fact that there are elections in both Britain and America at the same time. Second thing that I would look at in regards to a Black Swan event. The Black Swan events happen, and once they happen, things can never be the same again. They always inaugurate a new normal. They always inaugurate some kind of new normal. Things can never be what they were before the Black Swan event, okay? But although most people don't see it coming, even most pundits, even most analysts, most economists, most geopolitical strategists, even most people don't see it coming. Some do. Let's look at the Black Swan events that have taken place within the last few decades. September 11th. Steve Emerson was warning. The Israelis were warning something like that was going to happen. Bush didn't care. The Democrats didn't care. People ignored it. They kept giving visas to Saudi Arabians. They didn't care. But those who knew something was going to happen. Black Swan event. 2008, you had the ridiculous babblers. That guy who runs around ringing the bells and pushing the whistles. Was it Jim Bridge? What's his name?
Kramer.
Call me a of that chain. That chain's move is in its infancy.
What a clown. You know, people like that don't see it coming. But what's his name? Noriel, the economist, he saw it coming. Other people saw it coming. There were people.
Burry. Yeah, Michael Burry.
Yeah, there were people who saw it coming. Well, COVID, that came out of nowhere. It seemed to have come out of nowhere. It seemed to have come out of nowhere. But there were people warning about the politicization of the CDC, of the National Institute of Health, of the World Health Organization, that these were not scientific or clinical organizations. They were actually political organizations operating under the umbrella of public health. There were people who saw it. And who was talking, there were people talking about pandemics 18 months earlier, including a seminar that was hosted by Bill Gates.
Yeah, Ventura 1.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this Black Swan takes 95% of the people by surprise. The idea is to be one of the 5% who see the swan circling before it lands.
Before it lands.
Okay? And now I can tell you there definitely is a swan circling. I'm not trying to be a prognosticator or a pundit, but there's some kind of a swan circling. This is for sure. That's the way it is. That's my perspective.
Yeah, Jacob, you mentioned the UK.
What happens, things can never be the same again.
Yeah.
Once the swan lands, things can never go back. There's always going to be a new normal.
Regarding the UK elections, you think the Tories hang on to it?
They're in serious trouble.
Hmm.
You have a hopeless prime minister, a Hindu, hopeless. The real conservative, who was also an Asian woman, Suella Braverman, she was marginalized by the British equivalent of the rhinos. In the Tory party, you have the equivalent of rhinos. They tended to be remain pro-Europe. The Brexit ones tended to be the more conservative ones. And then you had people like Boris Johnson, who was suspended somewhere in the middle. Of course, he's American born. Nigel Farage is the only ideological beacon in Britain that's making all that much sense as usual. But the Tory party is in very serious trouble. Now, what would happen if Britain went left and America went right?
Yeah.
That kind of discord.
Yeah. Now back to the U.S. election with all the scenarios, Jacob, and all the problems that we're having with the border and the impeachment hearings, and hopefully they start and try to take Trump down and put him behind bars or even assassinate him. Do you see a scenario where we talk about the black swan, where now you have such a rip in the election system that there'll be no election? There'll be major problems with the election, especially with states like Maine, Colorado, others to follow to try to take them off the ballot. That there would be it'll trigger this massive move toward states not wanting to validate their elections.
Yes. Well, first of all, in addition to the things that we've already mentioned concerning the border crisis, with it being a racket, with it being slave labor, with it necessary to remain competitive in labor-intensive industries, and with the demographic spinoff, to keep the population from declining the way China is and so forth. A fourth is they want to give the right to vote to illegal immigrants, already allowing people who entered the country illegally to become policemen in California.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the power of arrest against American citizens when they entered the country illegally. It's just beyond the pale. So that will be the first factor. That will be a factor in elections, for sure. For sure. The Democrats are trying to take over states like Texas.
Oh yeah, overrunning it. Yeah.
And that's why they're so angry that the Texans are buying bus tickets to send these people to Chicago and New York who say they want cities of sanctuary. You have the corrupt Justice Department of the Biden administration litigating against the state of Texas for arresting illegal immigrants.
Unbelievable.
We're not going to enforce the law, and if you force it, we're going to take you to court. This is how corrupt it is. Openly corrupt.
Yeah.
These things have electoral implications. For sure. Absolutely for sure. Okay, that is the first thing. But the second is, if you can generate some kind of a crisis where you're going to use another pandemic, for instance, to force states to use vote harvesting, ballot harvesting.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
We have already got corrupt counting, or at least unaccountable accounting.
Yes.
Absolutely. It can absolutely happen. But that's only in the electoral sphere. We're talking also about digital currency.
Yes. Because on a situation like this, a black swan event, whatever we want to call it, you would have a introduction, and Jay and I talked about it earlier, CBDCs, digital security, digital IDs, just to get onto the internet. And one fascinating thing, it's already in place in certain sectors. And Jay, you can talk a little bit about this, because you have to deal with this on a consistent basis.
Every day.
People may not know. Yeah, every day. People may not know what you have to go through, but this is what's in store for the rest of us, normies, I guess you could call us, that unless you're dealing with it on a one-on-one basis, you really don't know what's already in store and what could possibly mean if these things become enforced upon you. Like you can talk about Black Swan event, shutdown, lockdowns that comes with digital security, digital IDs, and CBDCs. Go ahead, Jay.
So Microsoft, all their products are tied to their Microsoft Office 365. If you have an email, if you want to use a Word document, all of those programs are tied directly to Microsoft 365. And last year they implemented, and I've said this before, every time I log into Microsoft, it's required that it verifies using my phone's camera that I am facially recognized as the person who owns that account. And that's tied in with my job. And think about it this way. To use the program of Microsoft, to use their basic programs, that's already in place. Imagine the next step is to use a Google browser. It needs to identify you to log into your Google account, your Chrome account. Once more, most of you have online banking. Online banking, facial recognition to put your password and your username in. It's already here. And not only that, wherever you go, you have the phone that's tracking where you log in. So it has data. Where do you work? When do you work? How long do you work? Where do you spend? Where do you shop? How long do you shop? It's a form of, the digital ID is a form of surveillance and control. They can put that into an AI and predict your patterns of movement and everything that you do in a day. And what's more, they'll sell that data to people who will use it to market things directly to you.
That's going on already.
Correct.
Yeah, it's going to be enhanced. I was reading an article several years ago where it says Facebook can predict your bowel movements. And it was quite fascinating because Facebook got it down pretty well by tracking people's, I guess you could say by tracking people's, usage of the app. They could tell when they got up. They can tell when they did whatever they needed to do, when they stopped. And they said, well, that's when they actually go to the bathroom.
Tied in with the biometrics that they're already, the Apple iWatch, the Fitbits, all of those are biometric scanners. They can tell how healthy you are. They can tell what conditions you have.
Yeah. No, it is coming very, very fast. And that was several years ago that Facebook was doing. And now the enhancements of what you'd mentioned, Jay, with some of this trackable, some of the wearables, some of the AI that wasn't there a few years ago. Now it's enhanced. Now you're going to have, digital toilets, digital toothbrushes. That's all coming onto the market where they'll be able to tell if you're sick, based on your bowel movements, based on your fecal matter, based on your saliva, the bacterial saliva percentages. They're going to know if you let them, I suppose. Maybe you're going to have an off ramp on this, but they're going to know pretty much everything you ever wanted to know. They'll know you better than you know yourself, your patterns, your behavior, and of course, what you look at. And Jay, you're talking about not the Oculus one, but the Apple one.
Yeah, the Apple Visor. That's how they'll get you to accept it, though.
Yeah.
You slap on an Apple sticker and you say, "Wow, look at this! You're gonna get
it's so cool.
You're gonna be able to do all of these things and much more if you do it." And what does it do? It tracks your eye. It tracks your pupil dilation. It shows. It looks when you're walking down the street with it. If you were to do so, I don't know why you would do it because the battery life is very, very short. But if you walk down the street, it measures where you look at things in the real world.
Fascinating.
And it just tells you what you're interested. It tells them what you're interested in.
Yeah.
And that's how they market everything. This is going to revolutionize your life. It's going to be so convenient for you. But really what it is, it's a fetter. It's a way to rein you in, to control you.
Absolutely.
That's what it is.
Yeah, technology is moving so fast, and a lot of times people don't even realize that some of the changes and some of the new things that are coming on that already been in place, but they just haven't been to market yet. And now it is, and it's formidable. You can't get away from it. You talk about the Microsoft thing. There's other technology that's on the way. Your phone, people are attached to their phone, and majority of people they love their phone. They're attached to their phone. They don't go anywhere without their phone, and it's quite a big part of your life already. And technology companies know that. They promote it. They basically build your life around the phone, and people go right along with it. And all it takes is to be enslaved in that digital world, and you're part of the system. And,
well, Marco,
and that's a big thing for Christians. Yes,
Marco, it's even worse than that, because you have to ask the question: why are people addicted to their phones? The reason people, I submit to you, are addicted to the phone is because it takes away their need to think.
Right.
You know, you don't have to study to know something anymore. You just Google it.
Just
And you
ask.
can Google it anywhere you are. You don't need to look into something and really research it. You don't need to do a deep dive. You know, there's an answer right there that 98% of people will accept is correct. You know, think about how conversations go nowadays. It's not like you discuss things. It's like, oh, well, I don't believe you. I need to check this out.
Yeah.
And where do they go? They don't go to books. They don't go to authorities. They go to Google.
Yeah. If
So,
Google said it, that's it.
Yeah. So you talk about a diminishing intelligence in society. It has
that's for
everything to
sure.
do with iPhones and Android phones and the ability to get away from book knowledge.
Yeah, or studying or researching or thinking critically through a subject and reading up on it and having some kind of handle on it, not just a 1 minute answer. Very good, Jay. I wanted to switch real quick to something that as we finish catching up and we'll move into our backstage. And just wanted to let everybody know, thank you for watching and being live with us. And we appreciate your comments. If you have any comments, our guys could see it and read it. Jay and Davey can read it and see it, and let us know if there's an interesting comment there that we can mention. But also get ready for questions. We'll be putting Jacob on questions on backstage, and we got a pretty good backstage. You don't want to miss it, regarding believers in the Christian faith and the persecution that's going on. So one thing that's really interesting, it is the intelligence information that's coming in right now, Jacob, regarding Yemen. The US, the UK, and about 44 other countries have drawn some kind of line in the sand, which is probably going to be erased very quickly, on the Houthis. And it says, well, you can't move this, you can't do this anymore, you can't do that anymore, regarding the attacks to ships in the Red Sea. Now, the Houthis, of course, they seized another French ship. They attacked another one through drones. It seems to be that line in the sand didn't mean anything, because U.S., Britain, Japan, and other countries have said the same thing. It's you can't attack anymore, but they've been doing it since November 19th. It hasn't stopped. Now this blockade is working. Egypt's in trouble. There's less ships going into the Eilat port. Tell me a little bit more about that, and what are we looking forward to? The Houthis are going to back off. Are they going to continue this attack until something's done?
It's important, as always, we take a comprehensive perspective of what's transpiring with the Houthis and with the entrance portals into the southern access of the Red Sea and north to the Gulf of Aqaba, as you say, access to the Israeli port of Eilat and the Jordanian port of Aqaba, Jordan's only port,
Only port.
as well as to the Suez Canal, vital to the economy of Egypt. The first is that it will up costs of all kinds of commodities and oil from the Far East and from the Middle East to Europe, having to sail around the Horn of Africa, as happened before the after the Yom Kippur War, when the Suez Canal was closed. It's going to push prices. That's the first thing, including oil prices. It'll also impact Chinese trade. China is just as reliant on the Red Sea and the Suez Canal as are the Western countries. China has vulnerabilities in the Straits of Malacca, but it has the same vulnerabilities as other countries with the access to the Red Sea. In fact, China has a major military base at Djibouti, near the Horn of Africa, not far from the entrance to the Red Sea. Second aspect, the Yemenis government cannot really control it beyond a very limited point. It is Iran who's pulling the strings. The Iranians know they have a weak, senile corruptocrat in the White House, and they can get away with murder, so they're going to get away with murder.
No consequences.
It is completely hypocritical and useless and cowardly to have sent that letter to anybody other than Iran. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your time. You're dealing with Iran. who the Biden administration has funded, as Obama did, who the Biden administration has allowed to pursue Iranian enrichment to a very high grade of uranium, close to weapons grade. You know, and it is of course Iran who is controlling Hezbollah and Hamas ultimately. So it is completely stupid to have even drafted such a letter unless you send it to Iran. That's the second thing the media is not telling.
Very good.
The third thing is it does show that there's already active American and to a degree British engagement in the war that's taking place with Hamas and to a degree with Hezbollah. It's coordinated with these attacks on American bases in Iraq and Syria, where there's been over 100. And it is also the United States Navy defending Eilat and the lower Negev from missile attacks fired by the Houthis, missiles, again, supplied by the Iranians, fired with the help of Iranian advisors and technicians. It's Iran, again. So the United States is actively involved in the shooting aspects of the Hamas war. Fourthly, look for the usual parasitism and hypocrisy. Look for other countries expecting the United States and Great Britain to carry the weight and the American taxpayer to fund it instead of doing their share and protecting their own interests. Look for them to want a free ride on the back of America and of Britain. That's always been the case. They always do that. It's the nature of the European powers to do, the continental European powers to do that. We don't want to get involved in the shooting. We'll let the Americans do it, even though our own vital interests are there. And true to form, expect the same stupidity. When you've got a joke like Blinken, or a joke like Austin, or a corrupt joke like Biden himself and certainly Jake Sullivan, when these are the kind of people you're dealing with, expect more business as usual. So look for them to want a free ride on the back of America and Britain. But as you rightly point out, the ramifications for Israel's only access to the Indian Ocean and the Far East is from the port of Eilat.
That's right.
Likewise, and it's Jordan's only port on any body of water. Jordan's only access to international shipping lanes is from Aqaba. And again, the Egyptian economy, generally Sisi,
suffering big time.
It is utterly dependent. They cannot possibly meet their budget expenditures without the revenues from the canal. They cannot possibly do it. And Iran knows that. Iran knows this.
Yeah.
Again, it's the weakness and the corruption of the Biden administration has made this happen or allowed it to happen. It would not be happening had it not been for the incompetence and the corruption of Biden, of Joe Obama.
Jacob, real quick, are we heading toward a major escalation up in Lebanon, up in Beirut? Senior Hamas leader Saleh al-Arari was eliminated by the Israelis, and he was a major component of their attacks. Of course, he was known as a major terrorist, and he was listed as a global terrorist by the United States in 2015. So are we heading to a major escalation now that Israel has eliminated one of the guys? Now, there's many, and there's plenty.
Don't pay attention to Nasrallah and what he says. Pay attention to the ventriloquist, Iran. Okay? Pay attention to the ventriloquist, which again is Iran. There are people in Israel who are saying, once we get rid of Hamas out of Gaza, then we will deal with Hezbollah and Lebanon. Why fight on two fronts when we can fight on one front? We have to remember the economic costs and the impact on Israeli business and industry when you've got so many people in the reserves.
Yeah.
Israel is a reserve-based army. The IDF is reserve-based. It's called Miluim. There is a standing army, but the main fighting force or reservists. When you're taking people out of the job market temporarily, or out of the labor force rather, it has a tremendous economic impact on the rest of the economy in terms of its production capacity, manufacturing. It affects everything, as well as the cost of it. So the Israelis do not want to fight on two fronts at the same time. The Israelis can fight on two fronts at the same time, short term, get it over with quick. But anything prolonged, the economic cost is too high. So the Israelis may be wanting to deal with Gaza first and then deal with Hezbollah second. That is very much a possibility. But as far as what Nasrallah says, forget about him. It's what the ventriloquist says. Once more, we're dealing with Iran.
Before I get to Iran real quick, any thoughts on Istanbul and the foreign minister saying, hey, this war needs to stop? Turkey's been rather quiet about all this, condemning Israel, of course, and all that. But now that this war is now in the north, closer to Turkey, do you see Turkey playing a role in it, Jacob, at least to try to maybe not placate the Israelis, but just say, hey, this needs to stop?
Having denied access to NATO, being blocked by the Greeks over Cyprus and other traditional hostilities between Greece and Turkey, they're mutually inimical. Okay. They are not going to resurrect the Ottoman Empire the way they did before World War I, when the Kaiser made an alliance with Turkey. They're not going to resurrect the Ottoman Empire that way. The only way they can resurrect the Ottoman Empire is to extend Turkish influence and control into the Muslim Arab world. There is a great hypocrisy in this because the Turks subjugated, even enslaved the Arab world. Just watch the film or read the book Lawrence of Arabia.
That's right.
Or it was the Turks who destroyed the Kaaba. The Turks at one time destroyed the Kaaba in Mecca. Turkey is out for its self-interest. There is another factor that's important in what Erdogan is doing. It is theatrics and diversion. The Turkish economy is in trouble. He has made it even worse with his absurd policies of lack of monetary control. He pursued what amounts to pro-inflationary policies. Turkey is in trouble.
Yeah, the lira has been done for a couple of years.
2 British warships were denied access through the Dardanelles and the Straits of Bosporus into the Black Sea. He's trying to play his hand and extend his leverage in any way he can. He's also banking on the fact that there is a NATO base in Incirlik in southern Turkey.
Yes.
Now, I personally think that because of the proximity of the sovereign British bases in Cyprus, Incirlik is not all that important. What is important is the Dardanelles and the Straits of Bosporus, the access to the Black Sea. That is just a card he holds, and he uses that to bribe NATO, to bribe Europe, to bribe America, to bribe anybody he can. That's what he's doing. But the economy of Turkey is gone to the wall. It is a big mess. It is not getting any better. And he has to consolidate both domestic power somehow, and by sticking his nose into the Middle East conflict, that's one of the ways he obviously does it. But he's also has this ambition of taking the Turkey of Ataturk. Now, you have to understand what's happening with Erdogan in Turkey. Ataturk wanted to do with post-World War I Germany, Turkey, after the Ottoman Empire collapsed. He wanted to reinvent Turkey the way MacArthur wanted to reinvent Japan, where you'd have, in Japan, you'd have the Shinto religion and you'd have Japanese culture, but you'd have a Western government and a Western economy with a separation of religion and state. what MacArthur did to Japan. Ataturk wanted to do the same thing.
Yeah.
He wanted to have a Turkey. Okay, it will be Islamic primarily, and it would have an Oriental culture, but it would have a Western economy and a Western government. Erdogan is trying to take that
In
and
reverse.
and put back the Ottoman Empire, which had an Islamic identification. It would be much like if somebody came along and wanted to turn Japan back into a shogun state with the
Yeah.
shogun. With the
Yeah. Or what Iran did with the Ayatollah when 1970.
James knows more about Japan than I do. You want to comment, James, about what I said?
You're right. That's what MacArthur did, but one of the unobserved consequences of that is that Japan now is 99% atheist,
Yeah.
and the Shinto religion, it's not even a religion. It's a cultural
philosophy.
observance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there it is.
It's the same as China. China, when the communists came in, all the spirituality, they tried to destroy it.
Mm.
And they really turned it into a secular state.
Yeah,
Japan has
cultural
that same
revolution.
problem. Turkey,
Yeah.
it's so long under Ataturk. I think it's the same thing. You've got so many secular Turkish people that don't necessarily want this, but the new generation that's coming up don't
Yes.
like the status quo. So
Mm.
they want to go back and be in line with the rest of the Muslim world.
Yes.
It's
They
something
still have
that
the largest-
can only
yeah.
happen in Turkey. It could never
Yeah.
happen in Japan today. Japan is
No, I know. I'm just drawing the comparison between the MacArthurization of Japan and the Ataturkization of Turkey.
yes.
The model.
Absolutely. And just to comment a little bit further, MacArthur had to do that, by the way, because we must remember that the head of the Shinto religion is the emperor.
Yes.
So you have to separate that in a very real way to conquer Japan.
Yeah, I know. This was the stupidity of the Bush administration, where they thought that they could have regime change.
Yeah.
MacArthur was able to bring about regime change in Japan, permanent regime change, because he changed the mentality of the culture by demythologizing Shintoism.
Yeah.
He made the emperor appear on the radio and say, "I'm not God," and all that stuff. He didn't have much choice. They would have hung him, as a war criminal. Okay. MacArthur demythologized the Shinto religion. Unless the West is willing to demythologize Islam,
And they
there is
won't.
And,
you're
they,
going-
and they are very unwilling to do that.
Yeah.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
no way you're going to do what MacArthur did. There's no way you're going to. There's no way you're going to MacArthurize a Muslim country unless you do what MacArthur did.
That's right. Yeah. Jacob, let me switch over to Iran real quick before we finish, because we got to finish our catching up. Iran vows to respond to this deadly bombing. It killed 84 people. It was the crowd that was there marking the anniversary of the assassination of Soleimani, and 84 people died. They blame it on ISIS. Abraham Rizin said it was Israel. It was the U.S. Nobody really knows, but ultimately ISIS seems to be the one that it's most culpable of this. Now, the UN Secretary Antonio Guterres condemned it, the attack, deep condolences, blah, blah, blah. Usually the UN does that to the Revolutionary Guard. But nonetheless, Iran seems to be very quiet about all this, but maybe this will spark maybe some outrage. I know Blinken is going to the Middle East to deal with the regional conflict that is surging. Most indicate there's a massive escalation coming to the Middle East in 2024. Most people in the intelligence community of the world do not believe Blinken is up for this task. I would agree with that. But I just wanted to bring those two things before we switch over to one final topic. But Blinken to the Middle East, he's got it's on fire right now. Iran very upset with what happened with the killing of 84 people at the crowd that was marching for Soleimani. Your thoughts on those?
Again, the Muslim world knows that Blinken and Austin are a pair of clowns. They know that. They know that Biden is weak, senile, and corrupt. They know all that stuff. So this is opportunism for Iran. Okay. However, we have to observe this in terms of the Sunni Shia divide. Had Barack Obama and Biden not given hundreds of billions of dollars in unfrozen funds to the Iranian regime, it would be in a very precarious situation in terms of its capacity to retain power. There are secular Iranians who do not like the mullahs.
That's right.
They made a power play to depose the mullahs. However, Barack Obama took the side of the mullahs and wouldn't support the dissidents. We can thank Barack Obama for the mullahs keeping power. The same
He's
as
the gift that keeps on
Obama.
giving.
Yeah, he's the gift that keeps on giving to radical Islam. Okay. And Biden continues this, and Hillary Clinton, Kerry, they're all involved in it. We're all involved in it. But that is what is happening. You've got an actual growth of born-again Christians in Iran.
Right, that's right.
How big it is, estimates vary, but it's definitely something that's there. People are disillusioned by the mullahs and always have been since the 80s. But there is a growth of the church, and there's a growth of political dissidents.
Amen.
Who did it? If it was ISIS, and I think they've arrested like 11 ISIS adherents today in Iran, and they're blaming ISIS officially.
Yes.
Which is interesting. They're blaming ISIS instead of the Israelis. For propaganda reasons, you think they want to blame the Israelis.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
But they're pulling back from that. Now that tells you they're afraid of something, possibly an invasion of Lebanon, of Hezbollah, possibly. But or they don't want anything that's going to provoke anything that's going to prevent them from developing nuclear weapons. They don't want a conflict right now until they get the bomb.
That's right.
That could be another factor, which would also be courtesy of Joe Biden, of Joe Obama. There are reasons that they're not blaming the Israelis, and to go after ISIS. Well, why? Simply, again, it comes back to the old Shia-Sunni divide. The Shia-Sunni divide. ISIS is Sunni.
That's right.
Mullahs are Shia. This is a huge factor that most Westerners fail to perceive.
Yeah. Jacob, with that thought, last topic for this one before we move to backstage, and we do have an interesting comment that I want to read before we finish. I was reading about this Peace and Prosperity, which is basically a President Trump's resolution for part of the normalization, and it was drafted by Trump, by Kushner, and other members of his cabinet in January 2020. And it's about a 180-page booklet that people can read it. It talks about economic security, stable Palestinian state, and all that stuff. And it was presented as a way to bring peace and security and economic revival to that area. It talked about a two-state solution. Not that I agree that it should be a two-state solution, but politically speaking, economically speaking, many people jumped on this, Jacob. Many people jumped on it as a viable solution to the issue of the Palestinian, Gaza, and the West Bank and Israel. And they really wanted to change that area. In fact, if you were to read it, it goes on to explain that it will normalize the relationship between the two, and it'll bring other states into it, like Saudi Arabia and the Arab states, as partners into investing in Gaza, as well as transnational corporations, and it'll bring security, it'll bring economy. Listen to what they wanted to do. They wanted to build an island, build an airport, build a port, build a tunnel that would connect basically Gaza to the West Bank. Large task, but however they were going to do it. And the money was ready to go. It was going to be part of a major deal for Trump. And you know what stopped it? All the transnational corporations, as well as investment from other countries, said, no Hamas. No Hamas. Hamas has to go. Well, the Palestinians in Gaza said, well, it's Hamas has to stay. At least they're the ones in charge, and there's no elections. So much of the negotiation stops. Saudi Arabia says, will not sign off. even on the Abraham Accord until Israel deals with the Palestinian issue, which has to do with Gaza. What is it going to take to make this deal happen? And this is a question that is being surging recently, that the Saudis don't want this war to go on anymore. They want to get this economic deal done because it behooves them. It behooves them because they don't want the Palestinians in their country. Jordan doesn't want the Palestinians in their country. You know the whole story there. You told us about Black September and all the things that happened with the former king, the father's Abdullah, his father, dealing with them. Lebanon doesn't want them. Egypt doesn't want them. So the only way to deal with them is leave them in Gaza. And this was part of Trump's plan. Saudis are very warming up to this idea because they want security against Iran, against Turkey, and against the other Shiite nations. So the economy, they want prosperity. They want trade between Israel and the Arab states. They want religious freedom. They want to go into Israel. And they want to invite Israelis into Arabia because of the discoveries of the Mount Sinai possibly being there. And the Arabs want to visit the third holiest site in Islam. Jacob, this scares me a little bit more. This is setting up to the Abraham Accord, which was the initial intent of bringing
you're
Arab
exactly
and Jews
correct. It
together.
is part and parcel of the Abraham Accords. Look, speaking as somebody who voted for Donald Trump twice, I do not plan on voting for him a third time, but I did vote for him twice. I've always warned the Abraham Accord reeks of something the book of Daniel talks about, a false peace in the Middle East, a false peace in the Middle East. There will be no lasting peace in the Middle East until Christ returns as King of the Jews and brings about reconciliation between Jews and Arabs. That is the only way there's going to be a lasting peace. The Antichrist will attempt to counterfeit it, and it will come about by a union of strategic, economic, and religious interests.
Yes.
And I always was very skeptical, but also very suspicious of the Abraham Accords, even though it appears to make political sense, and even to a degree, economic sense. I'm not happy with it at all. Mr. Kushner, he is a unsaved Jew. I hope he becomes a believer, but he's Mr. Trump's son-in-law.
Yes.
It is, read Daniel chapter 9. A false peace in the Middle East is something the Antichrist will do. Now, I'm not saying Jared Kushner is the Antichrist. I'm not saying this is the treaty of Daniel chapter 9, the covenant. I'm not saying it is that, but I am saying it is heading that direction. For sure. For sure it is. That is the first problem. The second factor is, and that this is not being talked about, because of what happened in Dubai and to a degree in Abu Dhabi, but particularly Dubai, where you had something that was not oil-based, but that became an economic epicenter, a financial epicenter in Dubai, in the Emirates. Saudi Arabia saw this and wants to have its own, which is Neon. Neon is up on the Gulf of Aqaba, adjacent to the Jordanian port of Aqaba, and quite close to the Israeli port of Eilat.
Eilat, yeah, that's
and,
right.
And close to Sharm el Sheikh, and the entrance into the Gulf of Aqaba. So you got Egypt, Jordan, Israel, and Saudi Arabia all together in a close area. I've been to the area, of course. It's all together in a very close area, and as you point out, it's the almost certain location, certainly the most probable location of Mount Sinai.
That's right.
But something else, another factor. The Israelis really want to build the Ben Gurion Canal as an alternative to the Suez. This would fit hand in glove with the construction of Neon. You'd be able to have two-way traffic, not one-way traffic, two-way ship traffic, connecting the Indian Ocean with the Mediterranean. It could go to the Dead Sea from the Israeli port of Aqaba, or the area around Ashkelon, or the port of Aqaba, more likely. to the Dead Sea, and then from the southern access of the Dead Sea down to Eilat. And Aqaba is just opposite Eilat. It's walking distance, literally. So and close to Neon. It would be perfect. However, for that to happen, you'd have to make the canal strategically invulnerable. And that would require some kind of a removal of Hamas from Gaza. Because Hamas can attack Ashkelon. It can attack.
Very close. Very close.
It can attack Ashdod. And one of the possible trajectories or plans for where the canal could be built would actually let the canal come not out in Ashkelon or Ashdod, but in Gaza. In Gaza.
Which will fit right with that port idea of the port.
Exactly. There are people in the Middle East with long-term development.
Yep. You got it.
Speculations.
You got it,
The
Jacob. You
port
got
is
it.
central to it. Neon is central to it. And the Ben Gurion Canal is central to it. Now, the Ben Gurion Canal would also replenish the disappearing water supply in the Dead Sea.
Let's see.
Would make hydroelectric power, and it would help Jordan immensely.
They're all in on it. They all
Yes,
want this to
yes.
happen. You haven't heard much of this plan since 2020. And obviously the 4 years of Biden has really hit all this and made it impossible. But much of the negotiations that the Saudis have stopped could restart if
Correct.
Hamas is dealt with. Because
Yes.
what they want to do is they want to create a buffer between Iran, the Central Asian countries of that are with Iran, and them and the Arab states. And Israel is a big part of that. Israel's a big part of that. And of course, Ben Salman wants to make Saudi Arabia a big tech country, a big tech industry. And they don't, like I said, they don't want the Palestinians in their country. They want to keep them there. And this
That's
seems
right.
to be to fit what
Yep.
they want to do. So
Well,
this scenario,
Emirates-
Jacob,
apart from Qatar, the Emirates, Kuwait, and certainly Saudi Arabia want Hamas gone.
yes,
Egypt wants Hamas gone.
Jordan.
And Jordan wants Hamas gone. But they're just condemning the Israelis for doing what they want the Israelis to do. This is
They
the
have to do it.
hypocrisy.
They have to talk tough because of their Muslim
that's
population,
correct.
especially Jordan, Jordan. But
That's
they're
right.
not condemning it because they know ultimately if they want prosperity, if they want trade, if they want stability, if they want the religious
Yes.
idea of going into
Yes.
Jerusalem and the Jews going to Mount Sinai, they need to make this happen. So I'm concerned long term. Of course, the war is concerned me. Make no mistake about that. But it concerns me that we're heading toward a time where people are just saying enough with the war. Let's have peace and security. And Israel's going to be at the center of this. God knows what's going to happen if Trump wins. But if Trump wins, I can see a scenario where it says, let's go back to where we started, 2020, and let's get
Absolutely.
this deal done.
Absolutely. But we have to remember, as you said, in the eyes of the Arab interests, remember, if Jordan had a port or access to the Mediterranean Sea, if it had a port with access to Mediterranean, if it used the Ben Gurion Canal to take ships into Jordan directly into the Mediterranean, it would revolutionize the economy of Jordan, which is
That's right.
important. It doesn't have any oil.
That's right.
It would have other benefits. There's too much at stake of benefit to too many Arab countries. They all want the Israelis to get rid of Hamas, but they can't.
They can't say it, and plus they want a buffer with against Iran and Turkey. And Israel can serve that purpose for them. So very good, Jacob. Very good. I think we're going to hear more about this prosperity and peace deal. So keep an eye on that. As we see the war, we always got to think that Scripture talks about that there'll be peace and security. There'll be a major peace and security. There'll be a major deal going on in the Middle East that, as Jacob pointed out, I think he's right. It'll lead forward to other things that the Bible speaks about very clearly in Daniel chapter 9. So I want to thank everybody for being on live with us. We're going to switch over to backstage, but I did want to make one comment. This I think it was spot on, the person that put this comment on our page. The EU has already launched the CBDC wallet. That is true, the central bank digital currency wallet. It comes with an optional chip. It's running from 2024 to 26 throughout Europe, giving merchant banks time to make the switch over. And that is very, very true. So Bible prophecy and things that the Bible predicts comes very, very fast, and it's coming down the line very, very fast. So as we look ahead, we look forward to the coming of Jesus, but we also look ahead at the fact that many things are going to happen that are going to expedite this idea of not only Mark of the Beast, digital currency, eventually Mark of the Beast. And many people are going to be confused by it because they'll say, this is it, this is it, this is it. But ultimately, it's going to have to fit what the Bible predicts. It's going to have to be worship of the Antichrist, and to take this mark, the name of the beast, the number of his name, and it'll be that will be the Mark of the Beast. So we're not there yet, but we could see the precursors of it. So, all right. Well, we're going to switch over. Send your questions in if you haven't done it already. We'll see you on backstage in just a few minutes.
Hello, and thank you for watching Moriel TV. There are so many things that are happening at Moriel Ministries worldwide, from the Philippines to Japan to India to Africa and back to Europe and the United States. So many of our brothers and sisters are spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to this lost world. We are so thankful for your prayers. God has been faithful and has blessed us in so many ways. If you'd like to partner with our efforts abroad and at home, please take a moment to click the link in the description and help us as the Lord leads you. Thank you very much, and God bless.